From Kyle, Texas, it's my dad, Marty Seldom Used Reserve Coleman. And from West Orange, New Jersey, it's Casey the Beef Cregan. I'm Parker Coleman, and it's time for the show you've been waiting for all week, Sluggo.
Hey, Casey, this week you are actually in West Orange, New Jersey. Parker is right, and he's off restriction for a week.
Yeah, I wish I wasn't because of the storm that we had come through a couple days ago where I was out of power and all that. But I'm back home, back with the lights behind me. You see it, and we're all ready to go. It feels good to be home.
Exactly. Let's get started here. First, we wanted to shout out to your friend Jason, who let you borrow his house last week to record because of that storm. So thank you again, Jason. Really appreciate it. So we didn't miss a week.
Yeah, it was great. It was very nice. And I had multiple people offer their space up for me. Even my parents couldn't do it because they were out of cable and internet. But it was nice to have it, and very happy and appreciative to Jay Letter.
All right. We got a special guest this week, folks. We've been talking about him quite a bit over the last few days, and his show appears on the Seldom Used Reserve Facebook page and a few other places, which we're going to get to. Ellis Tolbert, 4th and 16 Sports. Ellis, welcome into the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate you guys looking out for me.
Anytime. As I mentioned, we broadcast, or I don't even know if broadcast is the right word, but we share your show on Seldom Used Reserve. It's at a few other places. Casey and I, as we went back and forth about having you on, we wanted to know more about your story. I was like, well, I don't really know Ellis. I know he went to Clemson. I know he puts out great information about college football, not just Clemson. So we wanted to hear your story, how you got started, and your relationship with all of the places, besides Seldom Used Reserve, like the Roar, how all that worked out, how Ellis Tolbert and 4th and 16 Sports came to be.
Sure. So, as you know, I did go to Clemson. I graduated in 2008. So I'm young, but I'm not very young. So I ended up we were talking about the Twitter thing a little bit off air, and I started that Twitter in 2015 just to have fun. I didn't know anything about Twitter. I mean, it's still fun now, don't get me wrong, but I just wanted to be able to talk some football, get on there and have some fun, and keep going with that. And then I abandoned it a little while, just watching football, studying, trying to figure out everything I wanted to, because my ultimate goal was to become a coach. I'd love to be able to do that someday. And, it got to the point where I was calling plays before they happened, telling people what was happening during the game, and people kind of caught on to it. But at first, a lot of Clemson fans weren't riding with me. And I had to keep going, and eventually I started back with the predictions. And around that time, Clemson started getting really good. And, I got a couple of eyes on me from that, and I asked people after one of the last predictions. I got ragged on really bad about the Clemson-Alabama championship game in 2018. A lot of people were giving me a lot of smack when I was saying that they're going to blow out Alabama. And it happened, and, everybody was saying, you should create a podcast. There's not enough characters for what you think. And I just decided to start it. I didn't know what I was doing. I still don't know what I'm doing to this day. I'm just trying to have fun, and it grew from there.
Well, that makes three of us that don't know what we're doing, but we're having fun with it, right? And that's why we have a forum. But I know I told you this off air, but I'll put it out there for everybody. I was one of those followers of you in predictions, and you were unbelievably on for every game. And then when you came out for that 2018 game and said that we were going to blow them out, I said, Ellis, you were my boy for 14 games. No way. No. And I kept asking questions, and I have a pseudonym on Twitter that I don't really use anymore, but I kept asking questions like, how do you see this? What are you seeing? And you were answering them back and forth with me, and it opened my eyes. So I was a believer from day one. I truly was. So when you got onto the 4th and 16, I actually donated to you as well.
Yes,
get you started, and it's awesome. I'm excited to hear more about you because you have so much knowledge. And when Marty said, "Hey, you think we should have Ellis on?" I don't think I let him finish the the conversation, the sentence. I said, absolutely, let's get him on, because I could sit back and listen to you for hours.
We really appreciate that, man.
Well, and what Casey said was a true story. I think the little 3 dots were showing up, and he was already responding to me before I could get the next question out. Hey, but doing a podcast is one thing, but a live show. Now, Casey and I have talked about that. We struggle. I was struggling getting this Zoom call going, so I'm not quite sure about a live show yet. But tell us about how that got started, and what is your relationship with the Roar? I see the logo sometimes on your page, or when you're letting everybody know you're going to have a show. We want to know all about it. What happened and how did it work out?
Gotcha. That's actually a really good question. So more or less keep going with the podcast. We've talked about how the Twitter started, and that kind of grew into the podcast idea. So I was doing that for a little while. That got a little bit of traction. I was trying to do more. I just didn't know how to. I didn't quite have the funds to do that. And, I was just sitting there saying, how can I make this better? And out of nowhere, Mark Childress, he is one of the hosts on the Mark Childress Show on The Roar. I actually reached out and was saying, hey, there might be an opportunity for you at The Roar to be able to get your podcast on live. So you would basically be having a radio show on, and they were looking to expand some production. They wanted to get a little bit more airtime out of things, and I just happened to be one of the few that they picked to add that. So fast forward a little bit, we're doing that, having fun. I'm on Thursday nights. I'm out there giving the game plan prediction. That was actually the name of the show. It's called The Game Plan. And from that, it picked up a good amount of steam as well. And I just got more familiar with the people at the station, Deborah, Ben, Will, all those guys like that. So and Walt Deptula, he definitely helped a lot too. And so what ended up happening is Mark went into business with another guy. His name's Will as well. He owns pretty much like a production company. He does a lot of video editing, and they started a studio, and they asked if I wanted to be a part of it. So they said, bring it in. We'll get your show on air. I was already thinking about doing this anyway. I had been tinkering around on Twitter, just pulling up my phone and sitting in front of me and talking with everybody. I'm surprised anybody wants to see this face. But
three of us again.
There we go, man. But it went from there, and now we're just trying to build it. So I've gotten to the point where I'm multicasting with through the 4th and 16 page with you guys at Seldom Used Reserve and the Roar as well.
Well, you're always welcome on Seldom Used Reserve. I always look forward to your post saying you're going to be live that Tuesday night. So you got a home there for as long as you need it, as long as you want it. And anything we can do for you, we'll be glad.
All the people there are awesome too. You guys have a lot of awesome engagement. A lot of people there really, really care about football. And I was just drawn to it in the first place because of all the clips. I just go and remind myself how awesome this has been, for the last 10, 15 years for Clemson. Really the last 10 though.
Well, can we divulge that a little bit? I know I'm going to go off the rails here. I'm a class of 2000, so you could imagine, excuse me, what I went through. I started with Tommy West, then Tommy Bowden. We carried Tommy West off the field at 3 and 8. I worked for ABC Sports when they would come on campus, and I would be on the field for all these games, and it was just like, we hope that we can beat Georgia Tech. And I know we're trying not to be Clemson-centric, but let's be honest, we have 3 Clemson guys here.
Yes.
So the ride has been the people, and that's why I loved your prediction so much. And I'm not trying to blow smoke up your tail the whole show, but I probably will. But when I'm not used to, and I told Marty this when we initially met, I'm the pessimist Clemson fan because of 1995 to 2000. And where we weren't winning games, we would lose to Wake Forest by 35, come back the next week and beat Florida State. So I still have that in me, even though the last, 6-7 years, I was in the Orange Bowl for the 70-33 game.
Yes, me too. That was awful.
So I still have that feeling. So when you were giving the predictions of how good and dominant, I'm still reading the rivals' fan sites for the other teams saying, oh, wow, that Wake Forest team, wow, they have 300 yards rushing a game, we're going to get beat. Like I don't think about the fact that we have Wayne Gallman back in the day, and now we have ETN and blah blah blah. So I'm rambling now, but I don't even know where I was going with it, to be honest with you.
That's okay. That's what we do.
Me.
Hey, Casey, guess what? If they won 3 games next year, they'd be carrying Dabo off, but in a different way, right?
That was one of the strangest things. I was there. I was alive for that. I'm like I said, I graduated in 2008, but I'm older than I look. It's one of those things where we've had some similar things. We were excited about, at one point, even when I was in school, Wake Forest was beating us pretty bad. So it's just a strange thing to think about where we are now, but that's what helped me get to where we are now.
Here's what I remember when they won in 17, the 16 season. Parker would have been, my son would have been 10, and my wife, they were in the bed, right? A game went on forever and ever. And I was running around saying, they're going to win. And everybody was asleep. And I was like, telling my wife, I said, you don't understand. You don't know how big this is. This may never happen again in my lifetime. And she said, oh, wow. And then they won, 2 years later. So that argument's out for next time. Man. I can't use that one next time. But I thought they would never win it again in my lifetime after they won it in 16. So I'm taking it's all gravy for me, fellas.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with, not knowing where you are. Again, we came up with the Clemson fans. There's a lot of younger guys now. I try to talk to them about it that are just like, yeah, we're going to win every single game. And I'm going to go there. I mean, I even caught myself. I know you guys have been giving me a lot of praise. I was dead wrong against LSU. So there we go.
I missed that one because you've been dialing back the Twitter predictions and doing it on your show. So I missed that one and I was coming for you. I was looking for it, but I didn't hear it. So.
All right, fellas. LSU, speaking of LSU, that ended last season back in January. Not a great night for any of the three of us, among thousands and thousands of other Clemson fans. But let's look forward kind of to the 2020 season. Hey, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 have punted on the season. Mm-hmm. Ellis, let's start off with you. Give us your thoughts, just kind of in general, about the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. I'm getting all the conferences confused. Punting away on the 2020 season.
It's a really tough situation. On one hand, you do want to keep these kids' health at paramount. You want to make sure they're taken care of. When you signed these kids, you basically brought on to be their guardian. At the same time, there's such a huge disconnect in college football. There is no real leadership as a collective. You've got the Big Ten saying, we're going to go ahead and let this go, but we'll play in spring. You've got the Pac-12 saying, well, we're going to let it go, but we're not going to play at all. And then you have the SEC, ACC, and Big 12 saying, we're playing. As long as we're here, we're playing. Then you got the Americans saying, hey, as long as they're playing, we can get in the playoffs this year. I think it's such a strange thing we've never seen. I don't know that we'll see it again in our lifetimes, just like Clemson's championships. But it's such a strange thing to see them try and acknowledge the fact that they can play in spring when we know that's not going to happen.
Well, we're coming up with that question. That was going to be my next question. But first, Casey, go ahead and give me your thoughts on the Big Ten, Pac-12.
Well, I think the Pac-12 should have been the first one, to be honest with you, because the California weren't even allowing kids back. The California university system wasn't even going to allow kids back on campus. So I saw that one coming. I think they were just waiting for another big conference to throw down the hammer. Big Ten losing their season, wow, man, that really stinks. And my first thought is, and I guess I'm thinking maybe against the grain, is that if the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12 are going to go on and be able to play, even the AAC, whoever else, will there be the transfer portal? Will there be kids? Can kids feasibly transfer now out into? Does Justin Fields go somewhere else? They're allowed to practice. They're allowed 20 hours a week. But there's so many more questions that came to mind yesterday after they decided to cancel the season about the kids. Because my first thought is about the kids. And it does suck that Justin Fields' last pass was picked off by Nolan Turner, whether or not I love Clemson or not, because that kid's a talent. But it's just there were so many. The cancellation was just the start. There's still so many other questions that come on, and like Ellis said, man, I don't think there's any chance they're playing in January, and that has nothing to do with the pandemic. I don't think. I think it has way more to do with the logistics.
Well,
with a little pandemic.
I asked that question on the college football discussion group we have on Seldom Used Reserve, and 65% said they're not even going to play in the spring. 19% said they might play in the spring, and I think 15, that's 99, but oh well, rounding error. 15% said too early to be determined. And, I heard someone have a conversation about like the Justin Fields transfer, but here's the deal. What if he transfers to, I'm trying to think, Wake Forest, and 2 weeks from now, Wake Forest cancels their season. So, where's he at? Is he going back to Ohio State for next year? He's going to the NFL. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But the point is,
but anybody, you could bring up any name. I mean, we're going to top end names, but
they can't even make a decision because there are so many unknowns.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you guys on that. I will say that I don't think any transfers will happen until maybe December, late December, early January. The reason for that is that most teams already have their schedule. You got to think about in their roster. They've already gotten all the early enrollees and the mid-years. They've got all those guys coming in. They haven't, made room on their roster to be able to accommodate another player. Some teams might have 1 or 2 spots open. I know a team like Clemson has, especially considering the attrition they have with the NFL and just graduation. But most teams are not ready to have those guys. And then how soon could they go to another school and be prepared to play a season with a team that they're completely unfamiliar with? It's just going to be some of the weirdest things we've seen going on. And I feel for a guy like Justin Fields. I will say this, though, if spring comes around and they do try to find a way to play it, that kid is not staying. He's going to go to the NFL, and that's that.
Yeah, that for me, that would be the smart move. Hey, Ellis, you're in Greenville, right?
That's correct. Greenville, South Carolina.
Have you seen on our show our little our friend we have, Terje at the Pit Boss Sauce Company? He sent Casey and I some barbecue sauce. Now, I got the Carolina Sweet Heat, and Casey got another flavor. He's in Greenville, right? So the Pit Boss Sauce Company on Facebook, we'll tag him on this video. Check him out. My man knows how to make some sauce. I think Casey was drinking it like a Coca-Cola.
I didn't even know they mixed cola in barbecue sauce, but he did give me that variety. I think it was hickory smoked cola, and it's delicious, man. And I love barbecue sauce. And I actually moved from Greenville back to New Jersey, so I know it well. I wish I knew Terje back then, because I would probably be at his house every week.
I'm going to be a new fan.
Yeah, we'll tag him in the in this video, but check him out. He's got some killer sauce. He's right there in Greenville. He's in the middle of getting a new website up and all that kind of thing. You can find him on Facebook. And Terje, we're still waiting for that second round of sauce. So whenever help Ellis out. Ellis is one of us now, so help him out.
We need some sauce.
Hand deliver it to you.
It's good.
I'd love it.
All right.
I love it.
Well, as of right now, we know Clemson's schedule, Ellis. Now, Casey and I talked about this a little bit last week. We want to get your take on the new Clemson schedule, and who knows, I might click on Twitter right now. It'd be something different. And,
it changes.
South Carolina might be back on the schedule for all we know. But here we go. Home, Boston College, Miami, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, and Virginia. Away, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest. Changes from the beginning of the season or the middle of the summer. Off the schedule is Akron, Louisville, NC State, the Citadel, and South Carolina. On the schedule is Miami, Pitt, and Virginia Tech. And, of course, off is South Carolina, as I mentioned. My take, and I think this is Casey's take also, is that this is a harder schedule, a more difficult schedule than Clemson started out with. What's your take?
Yeah. So it's ironic that I have two tails for this schedule. When it first released, I was one of the people that were saying, because if you look at it logistically, Clemson did avoid some of the bigger hits on the schedule. You didn't get to play North Carolina. We didn't know where the game in Virginia Tech was going to play. We didn't know when you're going to be playing some of these teams. So I thought that the ACC protected Clemson a little bit when they gave them the initial schedule. Now, you look at the front part of the schedule and then the latter half of it, getting late into December, that's one of the more difficult schedules Clemson's played in a long time. You're going to have trips to Blacksburg. You're going to have trips to South Bend, Indiana, and going down to Florida State. Very, very short amount of turnaround. So I think it's going to be tough. I still think that Clemson's the best team that any of these teams will face. But Clemson has to really focus, especially in a year that's been kind of weird. We didn't have a spring. You're still bringing some guys in with install. Hopefully that Clemson can keep healthy as well and go forward.
Now, one thing that I had, I know you touched on it for your show, but for our show, we talked, Marty and I talked about it early on in the season about the attrition at wide receiver,
Yes.
losing a T. Higgins, obviously, having Justin Ross go down with an injury. Once again, I'm going off script here, but how do you feel about the wide receiver class with an EJ Williams coming in for Clemson? Because it feels like, yes, they're the best team on paper, but you look at those wide receivers and we're used to having those dogs on the outside that are catching everything, making Trevor and everybody else look good. Do we still have that with a Ladson, with an Ngata, and the like?
I think so. I think Clemson's going to have some guys that can really step up and play some interesting positions, and I'll get into that shortly here. But I agree. Taking off orange-colored glasses that everyone likes to say, it is different. We're not going to have a guy like T. Higgins or Justin Ross for this season. You still do have Amari Rodgers. He's going to play a key part in this offense. My guess is that they're going to have a lot more of eye candy motioning going on to try to get him in open spaces. You're looking at your top two receivers for this year being Frank Ladson and Joe Ngata. Well, both of those guys are roommates. They're in quarantine protocol right now. So neither one of those guys are in practice getting that install. So they might be a little rusty coming in. That's kind of scary. But what this has done is opened up more opportunities for a guy like a Joe, opened it up for EJ Williams, Brandon Spector is going to play a huge part. He's going to have multiple spots. And then one ace that people are not really aware of, and it's starting to happen now. I'm super excited about it. Galloway's going to be playing some receiver. He's going to be spread out wide, and he's going to be a matchup issue for anyone. So Clemson's going to have options if they can get Frank and Joe healthy. I think they'll be fine. You got a guy like Trevor Lawrence throwing them the football.
No, I understand that too, and that was the thing. It was just you look on paper what we're used to as Clemson fans, and that's why I wanted to go to you. Go ahead, Marty. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, they're not going to be as deep as they typically are, it seems to me. But let's not forget, there's a number 9 back there who I think can handle more than 9 carries a game.
Oh, yeah. I think he's going to be – well, we've seen it. They've been trying to incorporate him more in the passing game, and he's starting to flourish. Last year, he looked very good. In fact, that last touchdown run against Ohio State shows that the guy has hands. He knows where to be. Travis Etienne is definitely going to be more of a factor. I also see Clemson using multiple back sets, coming in 21 sets, and, eventually having 2 running backs on the field, putting one of them out wide and saying, hey, run a route. And you do not want to see Travis Etienne out there by yourself if you're some linebacker trying to cover him. It's over.
Hey, this is I'm going off script now too, but that's what Casey and I do. Even when it's just the two of us, we're kind of off script guys. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the defense with the Xavier Thomas news recently, some other losses, during the off season. What's your take on the defense? I mean, everybody loves Brent Venables, and if we trust any coach at Clemson, it's Brent Venables.
Yes. Well, that's the perfect segue to everything. I think what you said is going to be the factor in this. You're losing a guy like Xavier Thomas. We are looking forward to him coming in and really establishing himself as the alpha dog of that D-line. You know, everybody expected that of him. I think he expected it of himself. We're not going to have him this year. But if anyone can scheme the right player in the right position, it's Brent Venables. We saw what we could do last year with a defensive line that was a little bit of a step back. I mean, I think we can all objectively say it was a step back from the Power Rangers. But you have a lot of size this year, a lot of guys that are promising. You know, you're already looking at KJ Henry as a co-starter with him. Well, now you got that opportunity to step up yourself. You know, you're going to be left behind. Justin Foster's probably gone after this year, right? Well, you're going to have KJ Henry and Xavier Thomas again. So now this is a chance for KJ Henry to step up and really do it. Plus, they're going to get helped out by that defensive tackle rotation. I mean, there's so many guys in that room that it's going to be a feast party now for whoever's lined up at the edge. A lot of young guys too. Justin Maskell coming out. Miles Murphy's going to be one to watch. Brian Brzee is playing technically either 2I, 2-tech, 3-tech, but he can be pushed out to ends. So you're going to have options all day. And I think that Brent Venables is, you know, it's not good to not have Xavier. It's going to hurt, but they're going to be just fine.
Now, I know everything starts at the defensive front, but those linebackers too, everyone's sleeping on, I think it's Jamie Skalski is the senior, and he got a new tattoo, half sleeve. He's working too, I see in pictures. So he looks tough. He's getting all the preseason love with the Lombardi and the Gursky, I think.
Yep.
What do you think about the linebackers? Because last year we did a little 3-3-5, I think, and now I think Venables would rather do a 4-3 kind of 4-2-5 kind of scheme. So what do you think about the linebackers?
It's kind of interesting because because of the versatility of a guy like Isaiah Simmons, it actually resembled more of a 3-2-6. So it was more of having Chad Smith and Jamie Skalski be your linebackers, and you could put Isaiah Simmons anywhere. Well, obviously, you're not going to have that kind of production this year out of the guy. I will say every single year for the last 4 years, we've had very good production out of that Sam linebacker spot. You know, so I think they're going to be fine there. Skalski is one of those guys I said was going to be a breakout player for Clemson. I think he's going to get in there. He has a nose for getting around the football. He's mean. He's a bigger, faster, stronger version of Ben Boulware. He's got that neck roll, like you said. He's got the tattoos, man. He comes with the attitude. Him going out of the LSU game, in my opinion, changed the outlook of defense because he was getting to Joe Burrow. I think he's going to lead that. We're still trying to figure out what's going on with the younger guys, but you got a lot of options. I think Balin Spector is going to be a missile. Mike Jones, let's see what you can do, man. Step up. I'm ready for you. Vontae Bentley's going to be out there playing. Trent Simpson, a guy that is brand new. He's going to get a lot of playing time too. I really like this linebacker core. I was a little low on them initially because I didn't know where we're going to get, but reports say that those guys are out there killing it. So I'm excited about it.
Okay, Ellis, now we didn't tell you we were going to talk about this, but we're going to talk about all three levels of the defense because I'm interested in the defensive backs because losing three starters, there's another area where some guys need to step up. Nolan Turner's made plays from time to time, obviously a huge one against Ohio State, but to me, there's something perhaps lacking there for an every down player is what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So your take on the back 4, 5, or 6, how many ever Brent Venables?
Yeah. I think if we're starting at the cornerback level, I think we're going to be fine. There's actually a lot of talent in those rooms. I'm looking at a guy like Darian Kendrick to continue being the starter at the boundary. He is one of those guys that is underrated in the ACC. He actually had a very low completion rate in his first year as a cornerback. So looking forward to his growth and being able to play there. On the other side in the field, I think you're going to have a combination between Andrew Booth and Mario Goodrich, two guys that are, you know, one's super talented. The other guy's really talented, but he's been there for a while. The other guy has to get his head screwed on. We've seen some issues with immaturity out of Booth, but at this point, I think if he can get his head screwed on, he's going to be the next great cornerback at Clemson. And then you have depth behind those guys. Lee Anthony Williams, you Sheridan Jones. You're going to have a couple guys. Fred Davis Jr., he's going to come out of nowhere and just blow people out of the water. Safety is the issue, truthfully, and you for a lot of reasons you brought up. Right now, we don't have any proven 4-down starters. And while Nolan Turner is looked at as a starter, he did have co-starter snaps in the past. He does get turned around a little bit of a stiff hips. A lot of people like to make a point of saying that if it weren't for Chris Olave running the wrong route, that's a blown coverage game, and Ohio State wins that one, right? But at the same time, he does have a good fundamental base for the Clemson defense. He knows it. I'm guessing he probably gets moved around a little bit. And then you see Landon Zanders, a guy who has really sticky hands. I think he's probably going to start at that free safety spot. I think they're going to flip the guys, rather having Nolan play at the free. I think he's going to go down to strong and play a little bit like Tanner Muse, because they're very similar guys. I think we all know that. And then you have Landon Zanders. Behind those guys, a lot of talent coming in too, just like the cornerbacks. You've got guys that can really come out and play. We're just wanting to see them actually do it. In that event, though, if Clemson can get that back four, they'll be fine. The D-line is going to help them out a lot.
That's great. Yeah, I think that was the thing. We saw Tanner Muse, who was reckless at times. He softened up last year, I thought, which his junior year, he was definitely reckless most of the time. Yes. Nolan Turner doesn't hit me as that kind of – I didn't mean to say hit me, but he doesn't hit me as that kind of hitter. That Tanner Muse kind of lead with the head, just go, missile, literally. But maybe a little bit more fundamentally sound. I don't know. I don't know what the phrase is.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think first, he's smaller than Tanner, nowhere near as fast as Tanner. But I think because of that makes him a little bit more technically sound, whereas Tanner knows that he can bait somebody and get to the other hash from the numbers and intercept.
So fast. So, yeah, he was so fast.
I think that's the difference.
Hey, I was thinking two things there on the final play there where Turner had that interception. It may have been a bad route, but it was so bad that I couldn't tell if it would have been wide open or not, because they were like 20 yards apart when he intercepted the ball, right?
Actually, and I want to caution that it was a bad route. I think it was timing issues. I think that Justin Fields knew where he would be. I think they were trying to work on that, and it was a combination of him running the wrong route and slipping. I'm just happy that a guy like Nolan Turner was in the right spot and got sticky hands and was able to intercept it in that game, because I did not want that to go to overtime. That was not a game we wanted.
Well, and the other point I was going to make, you guys remember when Skalski was going to kick off, or the Clemson kickoff was so bad that, hey, this Skalski linebacker kid, he kicks off in high school. He's going to be our next kickoff specialist, right? And I think they let him kick off one in camp once, I think.
Yeah, that's like Christian Wilkins, man. We wanted him to play quarterback. We want that, man. Never got the chance.
Dabo's always got something up his sleeve, something unique or strange or odd, or a big guy kicking off, Christian Wilkins in the backfield, or going down the sidelines against Oklahoma. Hey, that's always one that picks up a lot of views on Southern News Reserve.
Oh yeah. I remember laughing. I wasn't even as excited as I was, just like, that was funny. Like, no one expected him to catch it and then have dancer feet and drive down the sideline for a couple more yards. I mean, who expected a 300-pound man to do that? I didn't. So,
and if you remember, T-Stall the week before got drilled by Dabo. Dabo was getting lectured by University of North Carolina professors about how to treat his players on the sideline, and he's talking down to him and blah, 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 blah. And just the next week, he trusts that guy to throw a pass to a 300-pound lineman going down the sideline in a playoff game.
I love it. I loved every second for it.
And down in a playoff game, too. It didn't look good early down there in Miami against Oklahoma. Baker Mayfield running all over the field against us, and it didn't look – I was talking so much trash to the Oklahoma fans down there that were sitting behind me, and before I could blink, I was very quiet until that play.
Yep. That they lost all confidence after that one, and it was just like, hey, well, we're here.
Okay, guys, we've been talking about Clemson for about 35 minutes, and now it's been fun. Let's change subjects a little bit and talk about some broader topics. Casey had a couple of topics here. Ellis, he's noticed a trend of a lot of high school seniors who are skipping their senior seasons if it's canceled or moved to January, and we wanted to get your take on this. And we also wanted to talk about what the pandemic and the Big Ten and Pac-12. I want to say those reversed. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Big Ten
Pac-10.
and Pac-12. Yeah. Canceling their seasons. What effect that may have on recruiting? So let's start out talking about the high school seniors skipping their senior seasons. I think we got a recent incidents of this, the kid that went to North Carolina recently and is now enrolled.
Yeah. I think we had two that I can think of. There may be more. I know Texas A&M had one, defensive tackle, and North Carolina had Tony Grimes. I think the top cornerback out of Virginia ended up early enrolling. While this would be good, I think this is something that you don't see very often in college football. You see it in basketball a little bit. And a lot of that is because their bodies aren't necessarily prepared to go. Sometimes if you're a high school junior, you're just not quite ready to jump to that college game yet. But in this situation, I think the guy was physically mature. He had a good relationship with the team, and why not go play now, considering what might happen, the ramifications of high school being delayed or possibly not played at all. Problem is now you're going into a situation where, again, the ACC has not announced that they're canceling. I don't think they will unless, existential circumstances. I don't know. Something has to go crazy. But I think what happens is you're going to have a positive and a negative. Everything has consequences, right? You've got the positive. He's going to be part of the team now. He's probably not going to play a whole lot, but he's going to have a head start on the playbook, on conditioning, getting his body right in the weight room, and just acclimating with his team. Whereas the negative of that is that you might have been better for you to just wait till next year, because you don't know what the recruiting is going to look like if it is postponed or canceling. We don't know what the NCAA is going to do about their eligibility. Does he get this year back? Did he lose a year from coming early? I just don't know how that's going to work. But I personally like it. I think it's a good idea for some of these kids. It's just like a senior that decides to early enroll. You're going to go ahead and get into that whole culture, figure everything out, and get yourself acclimated. Be ahead of everybody else from fall camp.
Yeah, it's great. I know Corey Foreman was quoted as saying that he was thinking about doing it as well, but he hasn't chosen a school yet, so we don't know. But we did also hear that these kids are transferring down to IMG or these other from out of state. There was a kid from Arkansas that transferred out to California, but I don't know if California is going to play. So there's so many moving parts, and I don't mean to keep going back to it, but we still have so many questions because of this nonsense. But I just think it's interesting that that kids are looking, and schools are actively recruiting, if you will, these kids to come play. Now, a school like IMG, you have to pretty much be asked to go there. But
yeah,
it's a trend that I hope doesn't stick around.
Yeah.
But who knows how long this thing will be around, so maybe it will.
And I think it is kind of reactionary. I think it's based off of what these kids are thinking. Because remember, this decision was made for Tony Grimes before any schedules or anything was put out. We were still in the, maybe we're going to have football, maybe not type point. We're a couple of weeks away from it now. So I do think it was a little bit pushed forward that way. I don't think this is a trend that's going to last for a lot of players. I know Dabo's probably not going to do it. I know he's not going to. Same thing with the transfer portal. Everybody's like, hey, what if we got some players from? It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. That's for sure. So I should have brought this up back when we were talking about the Big Ten and the Pac-12. Hey, got it right. Canceling their season, but do you think that decision, as Casey said, there's so many ramifications we don't know about. My thought today, do they still get the $20 million or whatever from the Big Ten network? I mean, I think this show has a better TV deal than the Pac-12. That Big Ten network, I mean, those guys are raking in the money. Do they still get that money? They are not just giving up attendance and merchandise and concessions. They're giving up, theoretically, all of that Big Ten money. And how's it going to affect recruiting? Does the next guy from Florida want to take a chance on going to Ohio State knowing they might cancel the season?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And part of that's the financials too. I see Casey's wearing the Nebraska shirt. Think about this. Nebraska was talking about going ahead and branching off because they want to play this year because they don't want to deal with the possible repercussions of what happens if they don't play at all. They were talking about possibly moving back to the Big 12, but the truth of the matter is they can't afford to not be in the Big 10. I mean, they made $89 million with the Big 10 money this year. That's more than the actual Big 12 makes. So with their TV deal. So it's one of those deals where if they can figure out how to market this as we did this for player safety, I think some parents will agree with it. I think they're going to have to work in close partnership with the NCAA. Like I said, the eligibility issue. Think about this. If you're going to give everyone an extra year because they didn't play, no spring, right? Let's say spring doesn't happen. Well, that means everybody in your team, all your numbers stayed the same. Everything that you were looking for the 2021 class is going to have to be modified because that class was taken on the premise that you're going to lose that amount of players, right? Ohio State has like 20-something recruits for 2021. Well, they were expecting 20-something players to be drafted and graduate. If that doesn't happen, they won't have spots for these players. You literally have to tell them there's coaches that can make some things happen. Gray shirt some guys, red shirt some guys that they shouldn't, dismiss some guys for a year. But truthfully, there's going to be a lot of players they're going to have to rethink their commitment for the 2021 class. I just don't know how they're going to have room for them.
That was another thing that I thought about too. It's what happens if they're all granted another year of eligibility, but high school kids aren't going to get another year of eligibility. There is a thing in New Jersey that I just read recently, and I'm going way off, but they are going to do like a flex year for some of these seniors. And it's probably not the football kids, but it's for other sports that they can go to a county college. We have a lot of county colleges here in New Jersey for a year, fully enroll and come back and play like soccer, let's say, for their high school team. But that still ruins it for the kids that are trying to come up, the freshmen, the sophomores. So, I mean, when does it end? When does it end? Does it end in fourth grade CYO basketball? I don't know. It's such a slippery slope, and I don't know where it starts or where it ends. It's maddening.
Yeah, I think we have to get used to not being used to stuff. All right, I think. Yeah. And it's not just sports. It's kind of life in general. But all the rules that we knew, not all of them, but a lot of them are out. And we're talking college football, but I mean, think about the major leagues. They're playing 7-inning doubleheaders. They have 30 guys on their roster and taxi squads and all kinds of things. You're just, everything has changed literally. Yeah. Hey, Ellis, what do you think about kids transferring to schools like IMG? I know this has become a thing over the last few years. You mentioned earlier about it's bigger in basketball, and this is one of those things that used to be bigger in basketball, but seems to be becoming a thing in football also.
Yeah, remember Oak Hill in basketball? Yeah. Those guys had all the greatest players in high school ever. It was like the McDonald's All-American going on there. That's a really good question. Bobby Acosta, coach down there at IMG, is just it's turned prep football into a lower form. Can they be like Division IV football? Because that's kind of what it is. I mean, those guys are powerhouse, especially when you have a lot of other ones, Lakeland and all those other schools down there that are just crazy big. But I think it's, for one thing, I'm pretty happy about it because Clemson's finally able to dig into that pot of those players, and that's honestly what's helped Clemson be good. There's a ton of names that went down to IMG. Xavier Thomas was one of those guys. So it's one of those deals where if it's going to help those players mature both physically and as a man, because they're not men yet. We forget that these kids are 18 to 21. There's an Old Dominion quarterback 2 years ago that was 17 years old, 16-year-old defensive lineman for, I want to say Louisville 3 years ago. These are children. So if they can go and be taught the game of football, get them a little bit ahead of the game, because we all know high schools are not equal. I played at a small high school in South Carolina, in Westminster, South Carolina, West Oak. Shout out to y'all. We did not have the same kind of facilities as a Dorman or Burns around that time. You know what I'm saying? We just didn't. It wasn't the same. And when these guys can all get, you take those best players from those schools and you send them to a place like IMG, that's going to help them get more scholarships and eventually show up at your Clemsons, your Alabamas, your USCs. I'm in the real USC, not down in Columbia.
Shots fired.
Gotta do it. But yeah, I think it's a generally good thing.
I know it happens all the time. I know another one is Bishop Gorman out in Las Vegas now. But what I found is that a lot. I think Taj was looking to do one in Greenville. Taj Boyd was trying to do one. I don't know if it's taken off. When I was living there, I moved there from there in 2017. But what they're doing is they're going to school for about half a day and then they're going out to their sport. Now, I worked with schools in Florida for 15 years and they had that for golf and tennis all the time. Bollettieri, that's where Bollettieri Academy came from. These guys were playing tennis they were going to school from 7 o'clock in the morning till noon. Then they were playing tennis from 1 o'clock till 5 o'clock. Right. I'm just curious if that's if that's what these things are going to turn into. I mean, instead of just factories, like Bishop Gorman isn't actually an official school. They go to school across the street at some public school, and they come across and play for Bishop Gorman. So it's just because they're unaffiliated with the High School Athletic Association. So once again, I love the fact that they're doing it too because it's bringing all these players, and I wish there were more type IMGs. I think they're just really starting to get going, and they're getting athletes, but they need some competition, man. I know
they do.
Lakeland's really good in Florida, but they can't match up.
No, and all of those schools, honestly, it's kind of hard to keep up with them. This is like the Bosco prep schools. Those are factories too. Guys will transfer, go over, and I think now because of those kind of schools, the literal football factories, you're seeing other high schools allow transfer between the schools now. When I was in school, I'm sure when you guys were in school, if you lived in one city, you weren't able to play in the school from the other city. Now you can live in one and go and play at the other if you choose to. And I think that's what's happening now. And I think schools like IMG, can we even call it a school though?
That's what I was trying to get to. I go long-winded and I get off track.
Those places, are changing the dynamic of what it is. But I hope they're getting their education because education is going to matter much more than these kids than the football is. And I think we're seeing that now with this specific situation. There's going to be no football for a lot of these upperclassmen now, and I hope that they paid attention and took care of themselves in the classroom.
Yeah, there are schools like that here in Texas too. Obviously, it's not an IMG Academy type thing, but that school up in the Dallas area, Allen, with the
oh my God, Allen Eagles
stadium.
The Allen Eagles, man. Odessa Permian, all those.
Casey, have you ever seen that stadium?
Oh yeah, and I heard, wasn't there like a crack going across it? So after they were done, they couldn't even. I got my master's in sports business, so I did a whole study on that stadium. So yeah, I know all about it.
No doubt. So yeah, there are definitely football factories, and there are some in this area. Westlake had Drew Brees, and Nick Foles were Lake Travis, of course, but Westlake had Drew Brees and Nick Foles. How about that for the next quarterback at that high school? Nothing much to live up to. And Justin Tucker as their kicker in a boot too. So
it's amazing.
It's crazy. Okay, this is a question I've been waiting to ask someone for about 3 weeks now, ever since Casey threw this out. First freezing cold take of the year. Casey believes, Ellis, that Lincoln Riley's the worst quarterback coach in the history of the NCAA. Now, I didn't look this up because I'm a numbers guy, right? I like numbers. It helps me make some judgment when I hear these wild and crazy things. Now, Lincoln Riley's been at Oklahoma for 5 years, 2 years offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, 3 years as a head coach. During that time, his quarterbacks have averaged 4,100 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. Baker Mayfield for 3 years, Kyler Murray for a year, and Jalen Hurts, of course. Casey says Lincoln Riley can't develop quarterbacks. And I'm saying, well, wait a second, right? He took a walk-on and made him the number 1 pick. He took a transfer, Kyler Murray, who, whatever. He wasn't much at A&M his freshman year, but, give him a break. Turned him into a top, whatever he was, 3 pick. And Jalen Hurts, who looked like a great runner at Alabama, turned him into a superstar quarterback. But somehow he doesn't get credit when he's the offensive coordinator for developing these guys. And then when he was head coach, well, he's not really coaching them. He's not, I'm just on and on and on. My perception is he's going to take, in case he's not the only one, we have another guy on the discussion board that says he's a horrible recruiter. And I said, he's got the number 1 dual threat starting this year.
Caleb Williams.
And the next guy, well, he's next.
He's Rattler. Spencer Rattler first.
Yeah. So what am I missing here? What's the knock on Lincoln Riley as a quarterback's coach?
I
cannot agree with that one.
Well, here's my point. Before you go,
do that before we do this.
Yeah, because I deserve to be trashed. I'm not known to be somebody that actually goes out on these limbs, as I call them, a branch, because they generally snap. But my point is, we don't know if he can develop a quarterback because all he's had is 1-year guys. So yes. Is the production fantastic? I even made a joke last night on the discussion board, and Marty responded to me. I said, they're system quarterbacks. And he said, well, right, isn't it his system? Great point, and I needed to go suck my thumb afterwards. But what I'm waiting for is a guy like Spencer Rattler, who's going to have 2 years at least in the system, a Caleb Williams, who I've watched actually film on him, and I'm not a big film watcher, and he's impressive. So I'm waiting before I make my judgment of him. I definitely said he doesn't develop quarterbacks. I'm on record. It's taped. It's out there. But we don't know if he can develop these guys to what Kyler Murray was, to what Baker Mayfield, both number 1 picks, right? That's what I kind of meant.
So after hearing your explanation, I'm going to give you essentially how I feel about that, because there is some truth in that. Okay. So first and foremost, I agree with you. He's had Baker Mayfield, who was a walk-on, but he did beat out Davis Webb for that job at Texas Tech. So he was a starting quarterback. He just couldn't get it together with Cliff Kingsbury, right? So we know the guy was talented. He was a uber-talented player at Lake Travis. It is what it is, right? Then you get a 5-star quarterback in Kyler Murray. You play him for 1 year, and then you take him, and he's now looking at as the greatest quarterback ever, right? He beats out Tua Tagovailoa when everybody's like, what happened? And you look at the numbers and you're like, oh, maybe. But then and then you have Jalen Hurts, and we're going to get to this. And then you have Jalen Hurts, a guy who was a 4-star quarterback who played for the Alabama Crimson Tide, took him to the championship, was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year as a freshman. And then he comes to Oklahoma after getting beat out by Tua, and he looks much better as a passer, right? Here is the negatives on that. So, 1, it is a system. It is absolutely a system, which is why I'm trying to tell people Spencer Rattler is going to have the exact same numbers. Truth be told, you take out Spencer Rattler, put in Tanner Mordecai, he's going to do the same thing.
Put in Casey Cregan, and he's going to come close.
No, I got a rag arm.
Maybe. So you have that situation. The scheme, I will give that. He has a fantastic scheme until the playoffs, and there's a reason for that, because they don't really rotate a lot of different things that they do week to week. In the Big 12, they're able to do some of those things and just get away with it. That's another one of the things. So let's go back and look at those same quarterbacks in postseason play. Let's look at Baker Mayfield. Clemson really embarrassed him in 2015. He had a better chance in 2017 against Georgia, still couldn't get it done, right? He ends up being the number 1 pick in Heisman, but he still wins out. It is what it is. It looks better. It looks good for Lincoln Riley. But then you have Kyler Murray, a guy who's lighting it up all season against everyone, right? He goes in the playoffs. Alabama embarrasses them. He does better when they kind of take the brakes off, but they get embarrassed. Then you look at Jalen Hurts. suffered the worst beatdown in playoff history. Granted, playoffs have only been around for 6 years, but the worst beatdown ever, to the point where they were just like, please take him out and put in Spencer Rattler. We need a shot. That's kind of where I'm saying I want to see Lincoln Riley use those kind of have success against the better teams in the country. If he can do that, then Oklahoma should have won a championship by now. But
okay, I want to rebut some of this. All right. My point is, and Ellis said this, and just to reiterate, it's a system, and that tells you that any decent quarterback is going to do well in that. Like I told Casey yesterday, Ellis, the quarterback at Army ain't throwing for 4,000 yards because of the system, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Come on. So Baker Mayfield, he is a transfer, obviously talented at Texas Tech. It's kind of amazed that he started there.
Yeah.
But I mean, he developed him. He didn't walk off he didn't just become a 4,000 yards passer because he played at Lake Travis and anybody could do it at Texas Tech. It was a system, right? Okay.
Yeah, right.
Kyler Murray, saw him play as a freshman, and he didn't look like a five-star at A&M. He transferred out because he got beat out by somebody who got beat out by the next guy.
Yeah. A lot of beat outs at Texas A&M.
Yeah.
That's
so
crazy.
The point is, yes, Kyler Murray's a five-star, but he didn't show up as a, quote, five-star the way he had played as a freshman, right?
I rebut that, though.
Okay.
Kevin Sumlin is the worst handler of quarterbacks out there. He has had some of the best quarterbacks in college. He recruited all those guys, remember?
Yeah, he had like 3 5
Kyle Allen and Kyler Murray. He was instrumental in getting what's his name now? Can't even think of his name.
Kellen
Mond. He was there. He's had talent, but I agree with you. I completely agree with what you're saying right now.
And here's my final point. I told Casey I was going to laugh when Spencer Rattler threw for 1,000 yards in the 3 games they get to play this year.
I mean, look, you are not wrong. If anybody, I'll say this. My last point on it. I think you cannot undersell the notion of a system and it being his system. And the reason why you can't do that is because it is his system. Now, we all know where that system came from. His head coach, Mike Leach, who is also coaching Cliff Kingsbury, Graham Harrell. Cliff Kingsbury runs the same offense. He's the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Graham Harrell's the offensive coordinator at USC. These all guys were on the same roster at the same time. So for Lincoln Riley to have that much success, because truth be told, he is the most successful out of all those quarterbacks, even though he was a 4th-string quarterback there. Still, Lincoln Riley, as an offensive mind, I got to give him all the credit. I have to.
It just feels lazy, and I'm going to take this, Marty. I'm going to take it that Ellis agrees with me, so you can mark that down.
I'm playing the middle.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Switzerland.
Hey, Ellis is Switzerland. Yeah, this is Ellis. I can't tell you how much we appreciate having you. This is a really, really fun conversation. We got to laugh and joke and argue and disagree. And hey, isn't that what college football is all about,
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about.
We appreciate having you on. We would love if you'd come back sometime and talk to us again during the season.
Thank you. I would absolutely love to do that. We'll have fun with this. And I appreciate you guys even, like I said, all the support you guys have given me with Seldom. I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for having me and believing in me.
We'll continue to do it. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And Casey, after this, we know the guy, we know why Ellis has a live show and you and I record and edit. So, thank you so much, Ellis. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much, guys.
Casey,
Take care.
have producer Amy take us out.
Producer Amy, how'd we do tonight?
I think that sounds pretty good.